In a period when Thatcher was struggling to keep hooliganism in check, Ken Bates had his own radical ideas in the matter. He had installed an electric fence all across the Stamford Bridge should the hooligans attempt to invade the pitch. After being rebuked by the Football League, the electric fence, much to everyone's relief, was never used. Ken Bates was a controversial character to say the least. He was a former player who, after his playing career, made fortunes in various ventures. Now finally settled in as a football club owner, he helped Wigan gain promotion to 3rd Division in 1982. The same year he bought Chelsea for £1. For any businessman, the deal sounds too good to be true, but in reality, it was rather more complex than it seemed. Chelsea was under debt, but that wasn't their only problem. By the start of the 80s, they have been reduced to a 2nd Division club, narrowly escaping relegation. Stamford Bridge was just a rickety stadium like most other stadiums at that time, with running tracks around it and completely uncovered behind one of its goals. Even the pitch was horrendous and looked more like a war-torn field than a playing surface. Most evident in a match against West Ham, where West Ham players in whites turned muddy brown by the end of the game. The club in its entirety was a mess. Ken Bates knew it would take a lot to restore their former glory. Previous owners, the Mayors brothers, in a desperate attempt to lower their debts, sold the land on which Stamford Bridge was built to a property developer. The company was called Marler Estates, who leased the land to the club. However, their ambition was to demolish Stamford Bridge and turn it into a luxury apartment residence. But Bates wouldn't let that happen. With various legal battles, he had delayed the lease expiry, which was set to expire in the early 90s, gaining enough time to secure funds to buy the property back from the builders through the formation of Chelsea's Pitch Owners Club, a non-profit entity that to this day owns the pitch. In essence, anyone could own the club, but the true Chelsea FC could only play on the field that belongs to the fans.
Stamford Bridge is going to be, for our supporters, is home for home. Whatever they would expect to find in their home, they will find at Stamford Bridge.
When?
When is a good question. I can't answer that, simply because we haven't resolved the legal position over the ground yet. But it is inevitable.
Now with Bates at helm, they had successfully overcome hooliganism, gained promotion and avoided demolition of the stadium. But there was one thing that still bugged him. Even though they were in the top division, Chelsea were largely a club that lingered in the bottom half. Their team was almost all English and their play was drab. But in 1995, by some miracle, Chelsea landed Ruud Gullit on a free transfer. Gullit was a proven winner. With Milan, he had won everything that there was to be won, and his game was class above the rest of his teammates. Bates was impressed by his flair and made him player manager by the next year. Thus began the era of sexy football at Chelsea. Chelsea were 4th and 3rd in successive years. That was the first time since the 70s. Gullit led the foreign revolution at Chelsea. New players arriving majorly from Syria, one of them being Vialli, who replaced him as the new player manager. And before the turn of the century, the much-awaited silverware had arrived at the bridge.
Team good enough for the Champions League now?
Yeah.
Is this the next step?
Yeah, next step is going to be the Premier League. Fingers crossed.
While the renovation and development work at Stamford Bridge was still ongoing after the Taylor report, Chelsea's new liberal approach towards signing foreign players was burning a hole in their pocket. Most of them would arrive expecting a hefty salary as the power shifted towards players post-Bosman. On top of that, Bates had planned an overhaul of all the facilities to be state-of-the-art and built a so-called Chelsea village for tourist attraction. All of his lofty ideas outweighed their financial capacity. It was becoming more and more evident that Bates was recklessly running the club into the same mud which he had helped Chelsea get out of. By 2002, Chelsea was staring at a debt of £75 million and a possibility of going bankrupt. Ken brought in Ernst & Young restructuring specialist Trevor Birch as the CEO of the club to avert the crisis. The situation was bleak, but Birch saw there could be some respite if Chelsea qualifies for the Champions League. In the final game of the season, the club's future was at stake, but Birch wasn't giving up on this so easily. For this, he devised a plan no financial consultant could think of. The night before their fateful game against Liverpool, he gathered the squad together in a hotel, where after the dinner he invited a US veteran commander to motivate the team for the match. General Chuck's passionate speech about teamwork had moved the players so much that by the time he was finished, players were ready to knock the lights out of Liverpool. But unfortunately, they had to sleep. The next day, much to Birch's horror, Liverpool took the lead after just 12 minutes, with the skipper Sami Hyypiä's glancing header. As Hyypiä slid towards Liverpool supporters in celebration, Birch feared the worst. But the game was far from over. By virtue of Desai and Gronkia's goals, Chelsea managed to win the famous £20 million game. Birch may have helped avoid bankruptcy, but Ken Bates knew he could carry Chelsea only so far. and his time at the club had come to an end. In order to find a buyer, Birch ringed up a man who could get things done. Pini Zahavi was a former Israeli journalist who over the years had made many notable friends. Soon friendship turned into business, and in few years Zahavi was one of the most influential silent figures, a super agent as they would call him. Upon his visit to Moscow in 1998, Pini got a chance to meet a certain businessman. Zahavi's new Russian friend, like many others, was wealthy, but what piqued his interest was that he had been living in Kremlin apartments after Russian president at that time, Boris Yeltsin, had invited him to stay. He was known around the Kremlin as Mr. A. The fact that both men came from Jewish descent could only have worked in their favor, as Zahavi quickly became part of Mr. A's inner circle. In April 2002, Pini had invited his friend to watch the Champions League match, a thrilling quarter-final between Manchester United and Real Madrid that ended 4-3, which may have sparked an interest in buying a football club in the oligarch. Legend has it that when he was flying in a helicopter over the river Thames, "What's that?" he apparently asked. And to Bates' good fortune, someone said, "Chelsea." So when Zahavi was contacted by Trevor Birch over a potential sale of the club, the super agent already had a suitor. Subsequently, both parties met and a deal was agreed within 15 minutes. £140 million were offered in straight cash. Zahavi made $5 million, Ken Bates made $17 million, and a total debt of $80 million was disappeared overnight. Mr. A, or better known as Roman Abramovich, had finally arrived in the Premier League. Birch, excited by the arrival of Abramovich, broke the news to then-manager Claudio Ranieri. "Claudio," Birch said, "the owner's changed. A Russian has bought the club." Ranieri paused. "It's good?" "Yeah, it's fantastic." "Fantastic," he told Birch slowly. "But be careful, because you and me are the first who go home." "Why, Claudio?" "Yes, arrive new owner. The first thing is change is you and me." Ranieri's warning had turned out to be true. Birch was replaced with Manchester United's Peter Kenyon as the first part of Chelsea's Roman Revolution. Over $100 million alone was spent on new players. After such a hefty investment in the squad, Kenyon had already cautioned the team that they were expected to win at least a trophy that season. The pressure was more than ever, and the timid Italian says that his days in the club were numbered. All throughout the campaign, there were endless rumors going in and around the club regarding who would be Chelsea's new manager. Names like Sven-Goran Eriksson and Didier Deschamps were already tipped to replace him. As Lampard recollects in his autobiography, "At the lunch table, Ranieri stood in front of our tables and there was a sudden and eerie silence. This was it. 'I know what you're thinking,' he began, 'and I don't blame you after what you will have seen and read. All that I can tell you is that I have spoken with the owner and he has told me that I have a job here. He has told me that this is my team and what he expects of me and you this season.'" It was clear that Ranieri was a dead man walking. There was no hope of him staying at the club past the current season. However, his integrity was questioned in a curious incident of the Champions League semi-finals. In a game, Chelsea were up against Deschamps Monaco, who had been dark horses of the season. The first half had gone well, the score was 1-1, but then he insisted on Juan Sebastian Veron to get on, who although was amongst the substitutes but not fit enough to play. Even after his protest, Ranieri didn't budge, along with another wild decision to play Scott Parker, a central midfielder, at right back. Chelsea had an away goal and numerical advantage as Monaco were down to 10 men, but somehow after the match, the scoreboard displayed 3-1 in Monaco's favour. Players didn't understand what had happened. The calm and thoughtful figure of Ranieri had lost the plot completely. The team couldn't recover from that defeat and drew 2-2 in the second leg. People had begun to ask whether he sabotaged the game deliberately. Regardless, it was only this far Tinkerman's tinkering would go. The Champions League final of 2004 was virtually a showdown for Chelsea's managerial hot seat. Two young managers were against each other in an unprecedented season ever witnessed in the competition. Porto and Jose Mourinho made history that night by winning the game 3-1. Chelsea's next boss had been finalized. Jose Mourinho made his introduction with the English media on the day of his unveiling as the Chelsea manager. In one of the most iconic press conferences ever, he said,
Again, please don't call me arrogant because what I'm saying is true. I'm European champion, so I'm not one of the bottle. I think I'm a special one.
He immediately shook things up by handing each one of his players a rule book which they must comply with. No more partying on the weekends or having food outside their diet plan. Players were fined personally by Mourinho if they were late for the training. However, all of his strict discipline regime was just an instrument to something much greater. It was this concept of tactical periodization, which was foreign to English football, that Jose brought along with him. Invented by Vitor Frade in University of Porto, it was a carefully crafted methodology which suggested that physical, technical, tactical, and mental elements of football shouldn't be carried out separately. Frade's philosophy required every single training exercise to incorporate all four factors, and therefore overhauled the previously established approach. I do not believe in practicing separately, Mourinho explained in a coaching seminar in Tel Aviv. A boy can practice passing the ball brilliantly, but in a game, it's different. The universal activity is crucial. You have to put together these aspects in a match situation. He later added, a great pianist doesn't run around the piano or do push-ups with the tips of his fingers. To be great, he plays the piano. The best way to become a great player is to play football. With an arrogant coach and an obscure philosophy, Chelsea were rampant that season, winning the league in style, finishing 12 points above second place Arsenal, notably conceding just 15 goals. It was a bewildering record for English football because not only they had conceded the fewest goals ever in the history of Premier League, but no one ever even came close to those numbers. Chelsea, with the help of Siberian money and Iberian methodology, had challenged widely held notions in football. Abramovich had set a precedent for a radical new way of owning a football club, and in process, he changed the way football was played and perceived in a country that had invented it. In an interview after his takeover, he said, "No, it's not about making money. I have many much less risky ways of making money than this. I don't want to throw my money away. But it's really about having fun, and that means success and trophies." Bill Shankly famously once said, "Some people think football is a matter of life and death. I assure you it's much more serious than that." Football from that had come to a place where identity of clubs now stood at the mercy of billionaires wanting to have fun. England was turning into football's gold mine, and soon enough there were more invaders on the shore.
United is not Chelsea. They don't need one man. United is stronger than anybody in the world. So, Glazer, you ask me for what I think about Glazer? I said to you what I think about. I don't care about him.
Solution for all these Manchester United fans who don't want Malcolm Glazer to buy the team: go out and buy shares of Manchester United. There's supposedly 75 million Manchester United fans around the world. If every one of them bought a share, that's 75 million right there to have some stopping power. I think there's a little bit of a double standard here. I mean, nobody objected when the Russian went in and bought Chelsea. Glazer apparently wants to buy it for his son. Now, wouldn't you be very lucky to have a dad like that who wants to buy you the richest football club in the world?